All right, we are live. Mike, thank you so much for your time and coming onto the show, buddy.
Yeah, it's an honor to be here, man.
So, I was listening to a couple of your episodes. We were talking off air about your podcast, and years ago, you had written down on a piece of paper that you were going to be the best shooting coach in the world. Where are you on that journey, and how's it going so far?
It's an evolving journey. It's um, it's one of those things where I think as kids, when we want something, we kind of locate it, reach out, and go after it. And then as we get older, I think a lot of times we struggle to we struggle to find that thing that we're going after. We kind of get caught up in the day to day things of our lives, whether that be a job that we're in or whatever it is. And that writing that down helped me kind of aim my sights at the moon, so to say, and gave me something to work towards. So I would say it's going really well, and I'm enjoying it. It's probably the goal probably isn't what's on the paper anymore as much, right? That was the driving force originally, but like the cliches are, it becomes so much more about the journey in it, and I'm enjoying at seeing how things change and just kind of being along for this ride I've kind of put myself on.
I can totally relate. Just before we go into all these questions, just give us a brief background, 1 minute on who is Mike Dunn, where you from, how'd you get into basketball, and then how did you evolve to get into coaching?
Yeah, so I'm from Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. I played college basketball at Philadelphia University, which is now Jefferson University. Always always been a shooter. Started off playing baseball as a kid, and I think there's a big correlation between people who can throw and people that can shoot. So the first time I ever picked up a basketball, it was later, it was around 5th grade, but I could shoot it right away. Really wasn't a hard process to figure out from a sequencing perspective and how that worked, and fell in love with it, man, because it's a game. It's an amazing game because you don't need anybody else really to get better at it or get better at certain parts of it. Fell in love with it. Full ride to school. Had a great time there. Played for a Hall of Fame coach who's, I believe, first all time in college history with wins now. He's in the Basketball Hall of Fame. He was also a shooting coach. He traveled around doing shooting clinics, and in the summertime, I started to travel with him. So I would demonstrate, he would teach. So I kind of got the groundwork on what that all entailed, and eventually fell into what I do now in terms of just teaching people how to shoot the basketball all over the world.
Now, since you first started as a coach, basketball has changed a whole lot.
Hmm.
I'm 37 this year, and it has changed tremendously. Training has changed tremendously since I was a kid to where it is now. When we were growing up, I'm guessing you're pretty similar age. Repetition was the mother of all skill. That's
Hmm.
what was constantly in my ear was said to me on a day-to-day basis. How has training changed since when you first started coaching to where it is now?
I can only speak to what I do personally,
Sure.
right? So I'm not in the gym with everybody else. I would say that for me, things have changed. I slow things down a lot. I used to think I needed to get everything in, as much in as I possibly could, and if I didn't do that, I was somehow selling the person in front of me short. Where in reality, me trying to fit a bunch in was what was selling that particular player short. So it's more so over time getting comfortable with the fact that we're not going to do 10 things in a session, most likely. We might do 2, we might do 1, right? But if that is what long term, that investment in that hour that we have, is that if that's what gives us the long term results we're after later on down the line, then I'm 100% okay with it. So it's hard sometimes to slow down. I feel like we're in a world where everything's go, go, go. We need more, more, more. But as I preach to all of my players with shooting, it's less. Less is more. So we're not in the business of adding, we're in the business of taking away. And if that means we have to really, nail something down and be super deliberate about it over the course of a session, that's what we're going to do.
What is the typical frequency that you see a player? I know it must vary player to player, but like what would be your typical frequency?
Yeah, it's all different. Um, I see them mostly weekly, depending.
Okay.
So for locals, it's weekly. It's different than somebody that's I have a lot of people that will also come in for like a week at a time. So I'll see a player for, 5 to 7 days or something like that. And we go that route. But yeah, it just all varies. Professional players tend to come in for a certain period of time. brief sprint, 4 or 5 days. We work a bunch of hours in the gym. They're gone. And then that kind of is what it is after that.
So in that period of time, because like when I'm listening to you, I feel like I'm very similar where I try and fit a lot in, but then you end up touching on a lot of nothing. If
Yeah.
you were to if you were to train a player for say a month, like maybe it's an off season,
Mhm.
how many qualities or traits of shooting would you try and go get into with them?
I kind of see it as it's just one trait to me. It's this idea of numbers to leave numbers. I'm not sure if you're familiar with Josh Waitzkin. He wrote a book called The Art of Learning, which is phenomenal. But he has this phrase in there. He calls it numbers to learn numbers, in which you start off very basic in terms of how you kind of lay the foundational principles of your philosophy. And you get a player to understand that. And then throughout the rest of everything that you do, you're trying to then leave those numbers, meaning originally we went the phrase we use is 1 2 through, but we're trying to go from a 1 2 through to just one continuous movement through them. There's a quote that says that music is the space between notes, and to me that's what shooting is. There's certain notes or point in times that we have to hit, and it's learning how to move through them till the numbers kind of become meaningless, and then the player can really
Yeah.
become who they are within that certain philosophy or whatever. So it's really one thing. Again, it's boiling things down to make it as simple as possible, but it's a constant refinement. It's smoothing things out. It's making things, um, it's making things just easier from a standpoint of being able to repeat within the chaotic situations in games.
And when you go about, so say for example, when you're working with someone for the first time and you go about assessing their shot, how do you find traits that might be able to help them? Because everybody obviously shoots a little bit differently.
Right.
Basketball history has shown that there's been many good shooters and a lot of them don't look the same. How do you go about finding what's right for that person?
I always look to see how somebody's producing energy first. So we'll look at if you can't produce consistent energy and transfer energy from your body into the basketball in a consistent way, doesn't matter how good you are at the traditional mechanics of shooting. I think everybody that's been around basketball is somewhat well versed in uh, those traditional shot mechanics. So whether you want to say it's what your shooting hand is doing while it's under the ball, what finger it's being released, everybody has their own opinions on that kind of stuff, right? Everybody's very good at noticing, and I was one of these people that was very good at noticing moments in time. But again, coming back to this idea that shooting is really the spaces between that. It's how your body's moving. It's how are you transferring energy from your body into the basketball while all the while maintaining those traditional like mechanics we all know. So that's the first thing I'm always looking for. And for the most part, I would say almost everybody I see is not a good shooter, right? People come to me because they struggle to shoot. Now I do have players that are phenomenal shooters that we work to find these little pieces that we can improve upon. But for the most part, I look at the how are you producing energy? Is it something that's efficient? Is it something that's repeatable? Is it something that's going to hold up once I start to get you on the move a little bit more? And then we'll start to address that. And once we start to get that down, understanding how to prepare the body, understanding actually how to balance all that kind of stuff and how the ball needs to move, then we'll start to fill in the gaps in terms of, okay, maybe we could play around with the pressure that the guide hand's adding to the equation right now. Maybe we could play around with how that ball's currently sitting in our first position and how we can cut down movement on the way to the two, stuff like that. So it's energy first, and then the smaller details usually go after.
How important is watching film for you and watching what a player is actually doing on the court? Because everything that we do in skill development is a means to an end to hopefully transferring that on into the game situation. What's your process of watching film and then determining what that person needs to work on? And it could be someone that you've worked with for a while, or it could be someone who's brand new. Do you have a process in terms of what you're looking for specifically?
I'm looking for what we just talked about in terms of how the energy is produced first, but then I'm looking where are these looks coming from in games, right? What situations are you actually being put in? It's probably the biggest benefit I have. I started this virtual coaching service, and I have players that will send me film every single day, whether that be of them by themselves on the practice floor, within their practice settings with the team, because almost everything is filmed now, or whether it's the game film afterwards. So I'm seeing video every single day, and it's an integral part of being able to make adjustments because what you and I'm sure you know what a player does on the practice floor isn't always what they're going to do in a game, right? It's just one of those things. The game is much different. You're processing 100 different things that you're not processing on the practice floor. So it's a great way to get a better idea of everything that's going on with the player and how you can start to cater what you're going to do on the court with them moving forward to make sure that you're addressing those issues that you're seeing within the flow of the game.
Since you have such an amazing niche of shooting,
Mm.
is there anything that you feel like as a whole, not just one person, but as a whole, that coaches, whether they're shooting coaches or basketball coaches, is there anything that you feel like we're doing well as a whole? And is there anything that you feel like we could be doing better?
I think I think everybody's doing the best they can. And it's hard to speak on that because again, like I'm not in the gym with other coaches. So it's hard for me to say. I think for the most part, and the people that I've gotten to be around that do a similar thing and us spending time together, the thing that pushes everything forward is just their character and how they
Yep.
how they treat people, how they treat the players that they're with. And this constant beginner's mindset type approach to everything. It's knowing that you don't know it all. Like you'll never know it all. What I taught 3 years ago is completely different than what I teach now or how I deliver it now. And so that's the big thing. I think especially if you're in a niche like this and it's very specific, you know, we're in a cool time because maybe 20 years ago, definitely 20 years ago, this would be hard, I think. Like to be somebody that just teaches shooting and then you just have what your local whatever you live, that's what you have to offer. The coolest thing about this day and age is that you can leverage your ability to teach across the world. And if you get really good, that's why I tell anybody that wants to do it, just get really good at it. Because if you get really good at it, you will afford yourself so many at bats, so many opportunities that people 20 years ago doing it could never dream of. And to me, it's amazing, and it's a really cool realization to have because just get good, and you kind of can write your own story with it.
I was always curious because now more and more on the internet, like you said, since we're exposed to so much information, it feels like training has, I mean, there's definitely been different components, but it's very clear now that there may be a scientific approach to learning as well as um, I would just call it a traditional approach to learning, which I think both are necessary. Since you're an expert in this field, I was wondering if you were to give someone the best possible results, say in the off season, for them to go back to their school or wherever they're training, um, and get really good results in season. Would you rather train a person individually, or would you rather train them in a small group, maybe 2 to 4 people?
Individually. Well,
Okay.
with what I do, shooting is so unique to the one doing it. And what I've found is that relationship that is built through that is really the driving force to allow the change to happen. And in a group setting, you don't have those same moments with somebody where you can, hey, you see something, you can pause it. Now I can have I've had times with professional players where we've paused the session and we've just had a 30-minute conversation, right?
Huh.
And then somebody from the outside looking in may say, "Well, you just talked to this guy for 30. You guys just talked for 30 minutes." Like, but those moments can be the biggest breakthrough moments for the player because he's able to get out, "Oh, this is what I'm feeling." Right? This is what I'm experiencing while I'm doing this. This is what I don't understand. This is what I do understand. This is what happened years ago that's causing this mental block up top that's not allowing me
Yep.
to get to where I want to go. And so in a group atmosphere, you don't get those same moments. You never will, right? You never will. And so for me personally with shooting, since it's such a unique thing, it's all I do locally is nothing but one-on-one work. The only time I ever do group works is when somebody or an organization will bring me in for a clinic, so that's a little bit different. But for the long-term results, it's individual stuff, and that's it.
Now, my question to you, that follow-up question, I mean, I totally agree. Someone, I don't remember who it was, mentioned that your shooting form or your shot is like your signature. Everybody
Yeah,
is different.
great way to
It's
look at
very
it.
right. My question, Mike, would be, do you think sometimes their shooting percentage could go up or down depending on the decision that they make? So if we're practicing a certain shot from a certain spot or them coming off a certain screen, maybe the shot was not the best option at the time. Maybe it would have been a drive,
Mhm.
but they made the wrong decision, which led to a poor shot.
Right.
And that's the reason I was asking you about small groups, and because yes, the shot is very specific to each individual. There's no doubt about that. But do you think that when you're training someone under pressure, when they're forced to make decisions and when they're forced to react, that we also want to see that component as well?
Yeah, I think there's a balancing act there, right? And then it's my job while I'm in there at the gym to incorporate ways that we're going to drive decision making. We're going to go off verbal cues. We're going to process a bunch of different things at one time. So yeah, I think, and then obviously them getting in games and doing things there and trying to apply is a big part too. But I agree 100%. I mean, there's not just one way of doing it. There's going to be multiple facets of it. The one thing that I'll say is that, again, like, I come from a unique place because I see broken shots, and more than broken shots, I see, broken minds is really what it comes down to. So you're building something, physically, but you're also building something mentally, and I think that that's where, to get the habit down and almost putting them in situations where they have the ability to see things go in or go the right way for them is a huge step in the right direction for them as well. But like you said, there needs to be the balancing act no matter what.
We call it the two C's: comfort and confidence.
Mm,
And what you just said, I mean, everybody says it a little bit differently, but I totally agree with what you're saying. But you keep talking about the mental aspect, which leads me into my next question. When you're dealing with someone, when you're having these conversations with a player, and I mean, they're just lacking confidence, they have that mental block or whatever you want to call it. Is there a certain trait that you're seeing that's similar from player to player, which doesn't allow them to be the best that they can be?
yeah, I think people live along this idea of psychological time, but it's the same thing that you see with people in general. There's no difference between basketball and between life for me, or any sport or any art, whatever it is. I think a lot of people hold themselves back because they're stuck in what they have done versus what they have the potential to do, or they're stuck thinking about what could go wrong versus what's going on in the moment. So if you can get somebody to really understand that the only way we get better is by being here in this moment, right? The only way this conversation between you and I goes well is if we're in the conversation, right? We're not thinking about what we did earlier in the day. We're not thinking about how things are going to turn out afterward. And if you can get players to understand that, well, then now we have a really good chance of starting to make some big time improvement. But that doesn't just stop on the basketball floor, right? That needs to continue when you're not on the floor, right? You're not just practicing basketball, right? You're practicing how are you going to approach life? How are you going to be in the moment more? And the more you can find the moment from your day-to-day activities, no matter if you're eating a meal, whatever it is, right? The easier you'll find that moment on the court as well. So it doesn't just end on the court. It's an all-encompassing thing.
How you do one thing is how you do everything, right?
That's it.
Is kind of what you're saying.
That's
So
it.
being in that moment, and the reason this is intriguing me so much, Mike, is because when I was in college, I suffered from what we're talking about right now. I was overthinking everything. I mean, just to make it simple, I was overthinking everything. And to
Mhm.
get your perspective on this, you're right. I wasn't in the moment. I
Right.
was somewhere else. And like you're getting me to think when I'm washing dishes at
Yeah.
night, I want to be listening to a podcast because it's just boring, right? But there's a lot of research that shows that if your mind is in different places, and even just a simple thing as dishwashing, right? It's very, 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 very important to be in that moment.
Yeah.
And I'm sure that washing that dish has a lot to do with me not being able to shoot the basketball as well
It's
as I could.
And for many, that's going to be a very abstract thing. right? For
Yep.
a lot of people, that's going to be something that seems so far removed, but it really does it really does transfer over. And I found for myself, because I struggled with it in college too. I wasn't somebody that was aware of things like this, but now I've been able to apply it to like my personal life, my on the court stuff, my business life, all that kind of stuff. And it's almost, yeah, it's this just this idea that, where you are mentally, right, is going to be such a big piece of where you're going to get to later on down the line. So it's there's a great book. It's called Zen Mind, Beginner's Mind. I think that's what it's called. And if anybody wants to check that out, they really go into this idea of presence. It's absolutely incredible book.
Great. I want to switch gears a little bit, and I talked to you off air about this, and this is something that, to be honest, you are the first one that I'm doing this with, is a business side, and I think that this is very, very important, and this is where I kind of differentiate myself with a lot of other podcasts. And the reason I'm doing this, guys, is that I'm incredibly passionate about our field, just like Mike is, just like the rest of our guests are, just like so many of you out there are. Um, and we get caught up with the art so often, our craft, because we love it so much, right? That we will literally sacrifice our own well-being to help other people. And I'm sure Mike is like that, and I'm sure any coach who is passionate about what they do knows what I'm talking about. So I want to talk a little bit about business, because my goal for you here, guys, is that you're able to live your best passionate life the way that you want to be, doing what you want, which for all of us is basketball. Listening to your podcast, Mike, you weren't always let's just call it a freelance basketball coach. At
Right.
one point, you had a 9-to-5 job. Is that correct?
Correct. Yeah.
What made you go from, I don't want to call it safe, but I want to say a typical 9-to-5 job? Why make that change?
It was a combination of things, but I felt like I owed it to myself to make the change. I knew that I wasn't happy within the 9 to 5 that I was working. It was secure, for sure, but in terms of something that I look forward to every morning I woke up, it doesn't hold a candle to being on the court with other players and teaching. I just love to teach. So, to me, it was kinda like this, "Hey, let's just give it a shot. Let's see what happens." And the worst that happens is I end up back here where I know I can get another job, right?
Yep.
That's not a thing, but, let's swing for the fences here a little bit and see what happens. So, sometimes it's worth kinda taking that risk.
In all facets of life, there's always hurdles. It's not like you went from a 9-to-5 job and now what you're doing and now you you have no problems, right? It's definitely, it's just the problems become different. And um I want to keep it real with everybody. I want to keep it real with you as well, Mike. What kind of hurdles do you face being a business owner, being a freelance uh coach? What kind of hurdles do you face? I will start off with an example of myself, because I like to use myself. I like to be vulnerable to my listeners and to you. A lot of the time, I own the gym that I'm currently in,
Mhm,
and I love, if I could, I would just be coaching the entire time, right? So,
mhm.
because that's just what I love to do. But when you own a facility, there's a lot of different things that you get pulled into that might not be necessarily very passionate, that you're very passionate about. For instance, if you looked at my Instagram, 2 weeks ago, Hong Kong had one of the biggest flooding situations in history. So in 140 years, there's never been worse rain. And guess what? Our gym is on the ground floor, and our gym happened to be on the worst flooded street
Oh,
in the
wow.
entire city. One of the worst street in the entire city. I come in, and now the gym is under 3 inches of water,
Mm,
and I need to get to work, but just in a different way. Right.
right.
So that's just an example that I'm giving to everybody out there. What's something that you have a tough time with being in the market that you're in, or being in the role that you're in now?
Time. Right?
Time.
Time is the toughest thing, because everybody's pulling for your time. Everybody wants your time. Not everybody wants to pay for your time.
Yep.
Um, it's learning to really prioritize what you think is important from day to day, and then also value what it is that you do as well. I think one of the hardest things one of the hardest things for me was being able to say no. And as much as you want to say yes to everything, there's going to be times where people are going to try to take advantage of your kindness. And when you're running a business, you can't operate that way, right? It's just one of those things. So it's about being very mindful of my time, and knowing which situations to turn down, which situations to say yes to. I still struggle with saying yes to way too many things. I have this conversation with my mentor, who's the shooting coach for the Heat, and he'll tell me all the time, say, Mike, say you're doing too much. He was like, you need to learn to say no. But it also comes from, since we're kind of opening up in a way, it comes from this idea where, because I left my 9 to 5 job, it's this constant monkey on my back, per se, of I have to be working, I have to be providing, I have to show that this works, I have to keep going, I have to keep going. And then it results in you never taking days off, and all that kind of stuff. But it's kind of one of those things that the same thing that can hurt you in the long run can also really help you in the long run. So that's my biggest thing for sure, is just learning to value time more so, and then I'm trying to learn to say no, although I'm still not very good at it.
Do you have to deal with different parts of the business that may not be basketball related? So it could be marketing, it could be. How many people do you have? How many people do you have working with you?
Oh, it's just me.
It's just you. Okay, this is very interesting. Um, so like you said, time is that makes sense now. Time is the biggest issue
Right.
because it is just you. But in terms of working on other facets of what you do, so obviously you do a great job in marketing. What is the best form of marketing to you?
I don't market. So the way I look at it, I don't, because I just I don't really set a schedule for how I'm going to do things or what I'm going to put out there. I followed the same approach from the very beginning, when I had no idea what was going to happen, in terms of I just want to provide information. And so the more information I apply, obviously the more people tend to trust what I do or find interest in what I do. And I found that the organic way of doing things for me has been the absolute best. I want to learn the other side of it, or hire somebody else for the other side of it, because I think it could help growth exponentially. But at the same time, I think that the way that things have grown for me from a business side, and learning how to handle all that kind of stuff, has been just what I needed, instead of maybe too much too soon. And yeah, I think it's like, I've done everything organically. I know that's not going to be how everybody does it. But for me, if I don't if I don't do it that way, I stress myself out. It's going to be like, my mind's, again, we talked about being present. I'm not going to be present, right? So I found that I'm just much better, and I have this ultimate vision of everything that I want to do, and I know that I'm getting towards there some way. And somehow, some way, everything that I do each and every day is kind of serving, as a bridge to get me there. So that's kind of how I approach it.
You have so we mentioned this before. You uh give the term shooting coach. Now, I'm very curious. When you do that, does that in a sense help your brand, or do you kind of narrow yourself into too narrow of a niche? How have you found that to work?
I think it helps me, but I didn't really give it any other chance. So I said, that's what I'm going to be, and that's what I'm going to do. I had a variety of people that, in the beginning, when I started out to do it, they were like, that's not going to work, because nobody wants to just go see a shooting coach, right? They want the full thing. And going back to kind of what I said earlier, my perspective on it from the very beginning was, I'm going to be great at it. So I I don't care if I'm only doing one thing. What if I'm the best at that one thing? And if I'm the best at that one thing, well, then I'm gonna kind of, again, I'm gonna have control of working when I want, with who I want, and all that kind of stuff. And that's kind of the path that I'm on. I'm in a really cool spot that allows me to work with very like-minded people. And the majority of clients that I have, and players that I've worked with, we share a very similar mindset in terms of how we approach things. And by me being so narrowly focused on what I do, that has allowed that to kind of take form.
What advice would you have to people who aspire to be in your position and one day be an independent coach and be able to do everything you just said, to train who they want when they want, what advice would you have to someone like that who's just getting started?
I would say get as good as you possibly can get first.
Mm.
Um, I told this story a bunch of times, but I didn't make like a positive dollar for like 4 years, right? Like every dollar that came in went back out, right? And because it had to contribute to whatever's going on at the time, right? Um, my whole thing was like at the beginning, I had the 9 to 5 job. Okay, fine. I have that job. I'm going to just try to use this time to get as good as possible. Again, because if I get good, I'm going to eventually be able to leverage this long term into what I can do. I've never told this before, but like the way that when I started to even put things together, um, and to make sure, like, because people will think about taking that leap. You want to take that leap from 9 to 5 to work to be the freelance person. Well, how do you find the security to do so? Right. The way that I set it up was I started the basketball thing. I'm working the 9 to 5. Starting to leverage my following, create the online virtual stuff, all this kind of stuff. I saved up an entire year's worth of what my normal salary would be just from the basketball stuff. Right. So I saved up the entire year. So I knew that when I walked away, that I at least maybe I walked away and everything for some reason I woke up the next morning, it was gone. Well, at least I just gave myself a full year's salary to figure it back out. But on top of that, I also made a promise to myself that I was not going to leave my job until I was making at least 2 times what I was making at the job that I was in. So I had built the business up all the way to the point where I had the full salary sitting in the bank. And then on a monthly basis, I was bringing in 2x at the time what I was bringing in for my 9 to 5 job. And then I said, okay, I've gotten to the point where this makes sense for me to now step away. I don't have to worry about the financial component because I've already figured it out. I gave myself a cushion, and then I've been able to grow from there. But it all stemmed from just getting good at teaching in the beginning, being able to realize that, hey, it's I'm not making money now. I knew that I would make money eventually. And I know that's a very hard thing for some people to do because you want to make the money, you want to make the if that's what you're going to live off and all that kind of stuff. But it's that idea. It's like you're not successful. If you have money, it doesn't mean you're successful, right? You have to be successful before you have the money, right?
Mm.
Success comes, then the money comes. So get
Hmm.
good, right? And then everything else is going to start to come later on down the line. And I know that's not for everybody, but for me, and the way that I need to feel like I'm okay, that's the way that I could find comfort around what I was doing and how I could step away.
That's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing with that's some real stuff. Another sacrifice that you might have had to make, did you have to go ahead and learn how to do the online thing and put courses up and all that kind of stuff? Did you have to learn that yourself?
Yeah, I did. I mean, I did it all, but like it's one of those you figure it out. Like I
Yep.
tell you, like hey, of course I'm not going to be that good in the beginning, right? But you're going to figure it out, and then as time goes, you just get better and better and better and better. We are amazing people in general. All we are incredible. I don't think we realize that sometimes how absolutely extraordinary we all have the potential to be. And if you
Yes.
just say, "I'm going to finish, I'm going to figure it out," I promise you will figure it out. And that's
Yes.
it's one of the coolest parts about being a human being, man. Like what you can do up here is unreal.
And when you say get as good as you can, as you possibly can, what do you mean by that? How did you do that?
It was embracing that beginner's mindset, right? It's embracing this idea that you're never going to figure it all out, but you can get better each and every day. The same way that you're pouring into these players, telling them, "Hey, you need to trust the process in terms of 1% better each day," all that kind of stuff. You should have that same mindset as a teacher, right? You're never done. Just like a player is really never done, right? There's a reason Steph Curry's still in the gym getting up shots despite being the best shooter that we've ever seen. He's still working on things. There's always more. And if you can take on that beginner's mindset, that white belt mentality of everything that you're doing, you will never stop growing. You'll never stop. You're never gonna well, you might hit a plateau at times, right? But the longer you can mine that plateau, you'll eventually get over it. You'll have breakthroughs through that. So that's what it is. Be the learning machine that you are because we all are that. Learning doesn't stop after college. Learning should continue to go on and on and on and on. And if you have that mentality, hey, the world's yours.
Yeah, my learning really didn't start until after college,
Me
unfortunately. I
too.
wish it started a little bit earlier, but it didn't, to be
Me
honest.
too.
I I like I mentioned, I'm 37, and believe it or not, I started in strength and conditioning. I was a basketball player at Manhattanville College when I was in college, and I started in strength and conditioning, but I always played basketball, and I've been doing this strength and conditioning at least for 18 years because I started when I was 18. 19, 18 or 19 years. And every year, one of the goals I have for myself is however much money I make, I take at least 10% of that and it goes back into my education.
Mm.
Now, it could be not just basketball, it could be a spiritual education, which from what it sounds like, Mike, you would totally be for that, right? Like you would be totally be for that and getting to know yourself better. Or it could be I'm not technologically savvy, but or it could be a course on how to do what we just talked about online, or if you can't find it on YouTube, but it's bettering yourself. Is this continue and never ending improvement on investing in yourself, and so that you can share that and you're continuously getting better. So that's one of the things that I think,
I love
it's never over.
I
It's
love
never over. And it's not like it sounds like you and I are very, very similar. It's not even about attaining that goal.
right.
It's about who you become in the process,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that sounds cliche and whatever, but it really is true because once you get there, you look back and was like, damn, I missed that time when
Yeah.
I was struggling there. For some reason, when you get there, you kind of miss that
Right.
for some reason,
Right.
right? And
Cliches
so,
cliches are cliches for a reason, right?
right.
It sound but until you're really in it, you start to really understand, like, what you're saying right now makes so much sense. I love that.
Yeah. And you know what, Mike? Like, thank you for opening up and sharing that because that means a lot to me that you would share a story like that. And when I first opened the gym, man, like it we opened at 6 and we closed at 10, and there were nights where when I couldn't afford an admin manager, which I had to do all this admin stuff with. If you ask my wife, I'm the most disorganized person in the world, and I would have to sort that for another 2 hours, so I would leave by 12. And there were nights, Mike, where I would be like, F it. I'm gonna sleep on the floor and wake up at 6. You know
Right,
what I mean? And those are the things, you saving up a year of your salary. I mean, these are the things that it takes. These are the sacrifices
right,
that it takes and the discipline that you need,
right,
right? It takes discipline to save up a year of salary because you might be looking at something you really want, or like, man, these headphones look good. I would look really good walking to the gym with these headphones, right? But
right.
understanding,
Yeah,
keeping the clear goal of what you actually want and what is meaningful,
yeah.
right? So
Bigger.
thank you so much. Yeah,
It's bigger. I mean, like you said, it's bigger than the thing you want, right? The physical material thing. It's so much bigger than that. So it's the discipline is real, but it's worth it in the long run.
absolutely. Now, I want to jump into a little bit of the personal side because I want our listeners to really get to know you as a person. You have a daughter, is that correct?
Yes.
Now, I don't have kids, but I would love to one day have kids. How has becoming a father changed your view of the world?
I don't know if it changed it as
Okay.
much as it's solidified what I thought to be true. And that kinda goes back to this idea that I think everybody is truly limitless in some way. I think there's these untapped things inside so many people that we get lost along the way for some reason, and we don't reach the potential that maybe we just don't know we have. And my little girl helps me pour that into her each day. Like, it's this I'm just always trying to just tell her, "Hey, whatever it is that you really want to do or how you want it, like, I'm telling you, you can do it." I've been telling her that since she was a baby in her crib when she didn't understand anything that I was saying. It's like this pouring into her, letting her know that she's everything. She's limitless in terms of what she wants to become and what she wants to be. And it helps me see people that same way. So even if you had these interactions with certain people, we're not always going to get along, right? That's human beings. It's not always going to happen, but it's also realizing that maybe something went wrong along the line, somewhere along the line for this person that got them off track, and understanding they were just a kid at one point too, and they maybe had all these dreams at one point too, and who knows, maybe you can help put them back on track to find the thing that they lost somewhere along the way. So it's just it's reassured to me just how, again, I said it earlier, but how powerful we all are as people, and what we have the ability to become.
I think you hit the nail on the head right there. I'll see if I can get it out of you. Is there anything that your daughter has taught you that maybe
Mhm.
not teach you directly, but you see something as like, man, where did I lose that part of me growing up? Do you know what I'm trying to get at?
Yeah, she's fearless.
Okay.
She I'm much more introverted by nature. Like that's more of who I've always been. She is we go It doesn't matter where we're at, like, we'll be in Spain at a shooting clinic,
Yeah.
and she's walking out of there, like, with a pack behind her, you know what I mean? And it's her and kids that are 5 years older than she's leading the pack. She has this infectious energy about her that she walks into a situation, she kinda surveys the room, and she's like, "Alright, like, let's go. I don't even speak this language, but we're gonna find a way. I'm gonna have the time of my life." And that's been something that's very powerful for me because her energy her energy just attracts people, and it's like, well, if she can do it, I can do it when I'm out there on the court. I can do that. You know what I mean? And that's probably one of the biggest things. She's amazing in that regard.
Last question when it comes to the personal section of this episode. What is a successful life for Mike Dunn? When it's all said and done and you look back, what is a successful life for you?
If everything stayed how it was now, I'd be good. Um, I'm happy, like if it stayed how it is, good. If things progress further on down the line and things continue to grow the way they've been growing, that's amazing too. I have my wife and I have my little girl and I do what I love to do. And it's the coolest thing in the world. The only dream case scenario for me is that I live in I live on some big piece of land in somewhere in rural Tennessee, probably in middle Tennessee somewhere, and I have my own court on that land, and I have a big weight room on that piece of land, and I don't travel anymore. I've done all my travels, and anybody just comes to me, and that's kind of where I'd love to get to, where it's just that's my piece of land out there, that's my home, that's my little sanctuary, and yeah, that'd be amazing.
I love that. And so for the last part, this was a deep conversation, which I wanted it to be because I wanted everybody to get to know you. We see all the stuff on social media, but I wanted to dive deeper, get to know you as a person. But I want to finish this. And this is, again, I'm doing a lot of experimenting with you today, Mike. We have rapid fire 10 questions. So this is a little bit more lighthearted. Hopefully, get to know you, but more on the surface level. So here we go.
All right,
Best shooter of all time,
Steph Curry,
Steph Curry. Your favorite NBA team,
Miami Heat,
your favorite food.
burrito bowls from Chipotle.
Oh, oh yeah. Your one of your favorite drills for warm-ups.
Backboard, skinny side backboard shots. So ball has to
Oh,
go up, ball has to go straight. It's holding you accountable to be able to hit the backboard on the way down and hit an extremely small target. So it takes the outcome out of it for a make or miss, but it still has an outcome associated with you hitting that backboard and getting the ball to bounce in front of you.
check that out on Mike's Instagram. Favorite place for vacation?
Best place I've ever been to, and it was work, but it got to be vacation. It was Gran Canaria. It was Gran Canaria is a property of Spain right off the coast of Africa. It's in the Canary Islands. It is the most incredible place I've ever been to.
A place in the world that you've never been to, but you really want to get to.
Japan. Japan.
Nice.
I've
Hey, if you're in Japan, make sure you stop by Hong Kong.
Yeah, my wife. That's my wife's. That's the bucket list item for her. I just yeah, and so I'm hopping on board. So I'd love to be Japan.
Okay, big biggest pet peeve.
Not people saying they don't have time to do something.
Yeah, I hate that.
It
Yeah.
bothers me so much because well, the reason you hate it is because you've owned your own business for 18 years and you know how much time that you put into things, and when you need to make time, you find time. And usually it's the people that aren't doing not even a quarter of what you do on a daily basis. And they're like, I don't have the time to go work out. I'm like, hey, stop it. Stop it. I don't want to hear you say that. That's my biggest pet peeve for sure.
Favorite color?
Blue.
The number on your college jersey.
15.
Mike, thank you so much for being on the podcast. Before we leave, where can people find you? Because I checked out your website. You got some great stuff going on. Let us all know about what you got going on.
Yeah, I think the primary place to find me is Instagram at @CMikeDunn. I have a website, cmikeDunn.com, and then YouTube. I'm starting to do a lot more long form content, explaining drills in detail and stuff like that too. So, and that's just that's C Mike Dunn as well. Everything's C Mike Dunn.
See, Mike. So even your website, is that right?
Even the website. Yep, cmikeDunn.com. Everything's C Mike Dunn. Consistent.
Just before you leave, yeah. Sorry, go ahead. Consistent. Yeah, that's the main thing. Just before you leave, Mike, I really want to give like a heart-to-heart thank you to you, because this new kind of format that I have like requires for us to get to know the person, and you really opened up and I really got to know you. I felt like, you know what, man, this guy's a really good guy, and when I'm back in New Jersey, I would really like to come and see you and get to know you and learn from you, and hopefully develop a friendship that lasts a long time. So again, really thank you for being on the podcast. It means a lot to me.
No, I appreciate you having me for sure. And then I think it's cool. I've been on so many podcasts and no one asks anything about the business side of it. And it's a really big piece of it that I think a lot of people actually have a lot of questions about and are very curious about how do you do it? How does that stuff work? So that was cool to even have the opportunity to talk about it.
I appreciate that. Your validation means a lot, and I'm going to keep going because again, this is one of the things. Again, coaches are givers for the most part. Coaches are givers, and they want to just pour their heart into what they do.
Right.
People like you, people like me, but no one knows when they see someone very successful. They don't know that Mike Dunn had to put a year's salary aside in order to get what he wanted. Right. That's serious sacrifice, a serious discipline, a serious commitment. But it's stories that people want to hear. Right. And so I think this is a very, very big part of our industry, because I want to bring our industry together that nobody talks about. Right.
For sure.
We just see the flash. We see the glamour. Oh, he's working with NBA. We don't talk. We need to be talking about things that may be a little bit more uncomfortable.
Yeah, for sure. I love it, man. I love it. Keep doing it.